So welcome everyone. I am delighted today to bring you what I know will be a really powerful conversation with Jim Ruff, who is a social innovator, a facilitator, speaker, author, co-founder and director of Center for Wise Democracy. But today I am grateful to have Jim here as an amazing husband who now finds himself on his grief journey.
Yes.
And who I am grateful you are willing to share your reflections with us. As I understand it, Jim, you met your wife, Jean, and you were married in 1971.
Yeah.
And you had a son a couple of years later. And then you found yourselves on common ground as passionate advocates for social reform and lived and worked together until Jean fell ill with Alzheimer's and Lewy body diseases.
Yes.
So, and then you were married for 46 years before she opted for VSED, which is a voluntary suspension of eating and drinking to hasten her passing. And Jean passed at home at age 73 on June 22nd, 2019. So I am grateful to have you here while you're still very early on and you're traversing grief and the loss of a partner for so very long. Prior to Jean's passing, were there any clues that led up to her decline?
Well, there were a lot, actually. Yeah, I was thinking about so many. Of course, I wasn't sensitive to it. And mostly early on, or a lot of times early on, it would be frustration for me and frustration for Jean, because Jean wanted to, I mean, I was remembering actually when you asked me these questions in writing earlier, I was remembering some episodes where Jean, we were taking a bike ride up the eastern side of Lake Sammamish, and there's a Costco up at the top, or well, anyway, at the southern end, and I had to go back and get the car, and I left Jean at the Costco, and she really was upset with me that I would leave her at the Costco. And I mean, here she is. I mean, she's a real adult. She's not, there's no reason for her to be upset that I would leave her at the Costco. She could do things or whatever.
Right.
But it was an argument. And in her mind, this isn't what normal husbands do. 5 years before, it would have been fine.
Right.
But with the Alzheimer's, she was clingy, and it drove me crazy, and I just didn't understand.
Right.
So it took a while for us to get it that she had a problem. It was really a decline, a mental decline.
And was she willing to, I mean, how do you have that conversation when you suspect that there's something? Was she aware that she was experiencing decline? What actually led you to have the conversation about going to see a physician?
Yes, this is the part that I didn't get was so unique with Jean, is that she was always able to talk about it. She would lose this capability or different capabilities, but we could always stop and think and talk about it, which I see now is not possible for many people with Alzheimer's or Lewy body, any form of dementia. But she, experienced with the Lewy body, she experienced some hallucinations, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really scary to her. So she went by herself to a neurologist to find out.
Mm.
And, it was hard for me to kind of get it that this was a big deal.
Had she shared those hallucinations with you, or were you aware that she was?
Yeah, well, she told me that she had experienced these, but she's tracking her dreams. She has dream journals of the yin yang.
Right.
So it didn't feel like it was substantially different, except to her, it was substantially different.
Right. Right.
And so she went to the neurologist, and when she came back, the neurologist said she was fine, and that's what I wanted to hear. And so I read actually in her journal now recently, I mean, I realized that was upsetting to her that I didn't, stay with it longer. I was happy she was normal.
Right, right, right. And that would be your hope, you know?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So
Um,
there was a lot of that where it was kind of a miscommunication, really, or an impatience on my part, honestly, with we were teaching seminars together. We founded a nonprofit. We were doing these things together, and she was not wanting to lead this exercise or not wanting to, she was backing away, and I didn't understand.
Now, her mom had experienced Alzheimer's, is that right?
Yes, her mom had full-blown Alzheimer's and went through all the caregiver procedures and went to a home, and we brought her back so Jean could help her die, actually.
Right,
And because the caregivers, they want to keep her going forever, and
right.
so we really have to help her end it
Was
in a
there,
way.
how long ago was it that her mom passed?
Well, a number of years, I don't know,
Right.
20,
So,
27.
so was that ever part of your conversation with her, anticipating her fear of that she might
You
follow in her
know,
footsteps?
honestly, it wasn't. She didn't fear it, and I didn't fear it. Jean was the stable one of all the people around her. She was the most rock solid, grounded person compared to her sister and me and my sister and all the other people. We were all quite flaky. And she was
Huh.
she was kind of concrete, sequential, and keeping us on the ground. So, and even in when she passed, she had organized our Airbnb. So I had a housekeeper and a finance person and a yard person, and she knew that I wasn't going to be much of a I
So
would do a lousy job.
she was quite detailed about her advance directive.
Exactly, exactly. She wanted
Well,
to be
and
sure I was taken care of, and yet
well,
she had Alzheimer's and Lewy body.
right. Well, and that's the evidence of how valuable having an advance directive can be, that it's not only for your benefit, but for those people left following behind, you know?
Well, really, the advance directive was one thing, but we were in conversation with the doctors and with hospice a long time ahead of time, and we wrote a letter that just kind of laid out what we're doing and what's going on, and we kind of banked more on the letter and our relationship, although we had the advance directives done. But the advance directives are really assuming you're going to go through the long path, and that's not what we were going to do.
Right, right.
Yeah.
If the neurologist originally said there was nothing wrong, at what point did you get confirmation that there were challenges?
Well, after we kind of knew, I mean, we knew that this is not working, that Jean is at some point, um, and we talked about it. We saw the movie Still Alice.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever saw that, but it was really powerful.
Right,
We talked about, I mean, there was Alice, who was a competent college professor, and then there was Alice, who in the movie, who had deteriorated, but she hadn't deteriorated enough. So she was planning to help Alice number three
right,
kill herself.
right,
And she set up an elaborate plan, but that was Alice two. It wasn't Alice one. She'd
right,
already lost her job and couldn't do that. So Jean and I were often talking about Jean one and Jean two and Jean three, and we need to, you know, okay, now she's Jean two, and we need to act before Gene 3 happens.
right. And so at what point did Jean make that decision for VSED, and how did you handle that together? Because it's devastating. It's one thing when it's a linear logical decision, then and then it's another thing when it becomes the reality that you're facing.
Yes. Well, it's true. The real Gina knew she was going to do VSED when she watched her father die. She realized, oh my God, there's another way. And he chose to stop eating and drinking. So that was true. And then your question is, I mean, we always knew that we're both of us intending to do VSED, really. But there was our son works for a cruise line. And so we were able to take a cruise very cheaply, and we took two of them. We took one that left from the city of Montreal. Well, this is actually a long story. I'll shorten it. Jean couldn't say the word Montreal, even though that was the closest big city to where she grew up. She could not say that name. And when that was the turning point for us, we spent the day before taking this cruise in Montreal, kind of crying and talking and realizing all these efforts that we had been doing to overcome the Alzheimer's and Lewy body diagnosis, which there's a lot of books and a lot of articles and a lot of procedures and preparations and stuff. And that was when we took it in that these aren't working.
So you tried both medical as well as alternative approaches?
Yes, yes. And that was the turning. I mean, it was a struggle because I became the food Nazi and the food, I mean, I was the one trying to get Jean to stay on the program.
Right.
And really, that wasn't a role that it took me out of compassion, really. And,
right.
And it wasn't what she wanted, really. Wasn't what she needed.
Right. Right.
So we did that for a while, and then we went on that cruise. And the night before the cruise left, we got it that this was not working. And the cruise was really terrific because we're together, and somebody else is preparing the meals, and the same closet every night, and it was different. And so we were able to just kind of really assess where we are. And then we took another cruise, same boat, where we made the choice about when this VSED would begin.
And she was still cognitively clear enough to make.
She was clear enough, yeah. She was clear enough to be there with that choice. And it was a struggle because with Alzheimer's, you can't do death with dignity. You can't take a poison, whatever. You have, but you always can stop eating and drinking.
Yes, yes.
So that's the thing. But the Alzheimer's patients, they don't know about it. Nobody tells them. All the caregivers in the world do not mention this.
Right.
The doctors don't mention it.
Right.
It's a secret.
Yeah. And fortunately, in Washington State, we have more access to the greatest number of options available, and yet our physicians don't get any more than 2 or 3 weeks. It's like a barely mention it in medical school, how to talk to people about their options and the process of death and dying.
Right. Well, we have the death with dignity. That's great.
Right.
But you can't do that with Alzheimer's.
That's right.
But you can always do VSED. But you really want the help of hospice. And of course, hospice, one day you stop eating and drinking. How is hospice going to get it that this is really,
right?
And how can that be legal and blah, blah, blah.
But you can't be put on hospice until you're considered terminal, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we spent months beforehand talking with our doctor, talking with hospice, and preparing the letter. It's the letter that really matters. The advance directives are great if you go down the long path, but they're not great if you're going to do VSED.
Yeah,
it doesn't help.
The letter has to clearly state what your values are and your intentions are,
and
correct?
your intentions, and you see them, and you see people enough to know, oh my God, this is really going to happen.
Right, right.
And so we sort of, I believe we were pivotal in helping our local hospice kind of understand what could be done.
Absolutely. So how did you go about, tell us kind of the timeline of how you went about securing medical support? Because again, not all doctors and not all hospices are the same. Um,
Right.
some may understand and support that choice. Others may really backpedal and resist support. So explain a little bit how your journey went.
Well, we were certainly seeing we had a number of doctors actually, our family physician, general practitioner, and then we saw a integral medicine person in Seattle, and we saw the brain and wellness group that made the diagnosis, the University of Washington, uh, and they don't really, the big diagnosis doesn't, they really don't want to hear about VSED. They
Yeah,
don't want to talk about it.
they want to just turn you loose to go have your Alzheimer's and Lewy body.
And that way on, they have a procedure, they have a really helpful procedure. It's really great. I mean, people can enjoy themselves all the way, down the line, I think. People tend to be happy at whatever level they're at. It's just that they've lost so much capability.
Right.
So that's the path that seems normal for them. But our local doc, we helped him see that this was what Gene was going to do. And we met over many visits. And then we went to a couples group where most of the groups are not couples. Most of them are for the caregivers.
Right.
You go to the couples group, and there you are. And it turns out that 3 of the people, the supporters of that group, are in the local hospice.
Mm-hmm.
So Gene spoke a number of times, which were just kind of, jaw-dropping for the group, because the group is still oriented toward happiness, and this is light, and trying to keep things light and bright and fluffy. So, but Gene was speaking, and I was speaking, that this is our path. This is what we're doing. And so the hospice workers were really jazzed about. I mean, not jazzed, but I mean, they were very supportive.
Right.
And so were all the couples, but the caregivers, that was not in their agenda.
Right.
So, but the hospice people really began to understand that this is what we were going to do, and they were very, very supportive. And we planned it. So Jean had in mind, because she remembered from her father that the hospital bed that the hospice would bring.
Right.
And so she wanted that hospital bed to be there when the grandchildren come.
Uh-huh.
He wanted to be in that hospital bed. And she planned it out. So we had it all worked out that we would tell our general practitioner at a certain time, and then he could sign the letter of intent. And then we had it worked out that we would tell the doctor that's part of hospice, and he could sign.
Right.
And that was great. He did great. I mean, he had to change the date, but it worked out great. And
At
then
what point did you include your family and friends in on the decision? How did they respond?
well, everybody thinks, hey, it's too early, everybody, because they're not they're not with us. Jean looks great. She can talk.
They're not living her experience.
They're not living her experience.
Yeah.
But but we're talking with them, and they're generally supportive, but they all feel to a person that this is too early.
Right.
But they're not really there. And Jean, as we got close to the date, Jean had some experiences that were just terrifying to her, that she might lose it. Like she took a nap and she couldn't remember where she was, or the house. It took a couple hours but it came back.
Mm-hmm.
she had other experiences that were just absolutely just, I've never seen her suffer so much as
Right.
realizing that I might not make it until our early date.
Right.
And so she's thinking, she's processing, she's standing with me processing this at times
Right.
and scared that she won't make it.
Right.
So, but it didn't turn out that way. And she did. Then we had this whole schedule planned out where we wanted the hospital bed to be arriving on Friday, which meant because they couldn't do it on the weekend, and then the grandkids could come, and so Jean had it worked out, and
Uh-huh.
she was almost pleased. I mean, she was pleased that she was going to make it.
Right. Right. How did you prepare the grandkids? Were they aware?
Well, a lot of that happened, from my daughter-in-law and my son,
Right.
but they were terrific.
Right.
And hospice was terrific, and the people that came were terrific. We had, hospice provides, we had singers come,
Mm, yeah,
the thresholds here, they were
singers.
awesome. And then we had, massages for Jean, and the nurses would come, and then we had a little packet of anti-anxiety. Jean actually pushed the anti-anxiety drug away because it came in a dropper and she did not want liquid.
Uh-huh.
She
Uh-huh.
didn't want to
Anything to
promote
prolong it.
anything to promote it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was and the grant just, I mean, so many people have said to me that were there, like the Threshold singers or the hospice people or whatever, just said it was so beautiful, the whole process.
Right. Right.
And and it was glorious, but I was numb. I mean, I didn't know that I was in grief. I mean, I couldn't be in grief until, we
Yes.
clear away the mess and everything. And then it's harder when down the road.
Who was with her when she passed?
Well, it was in the middle of the night. So I was sleeping in that room,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought she had passed, and I'd now realized that she didn't. I thought she had passed. I woke up and realized, oh my gosh, she's had passed, and I spent some moment with her, and then I went back to sleep, and then she had rearranged herself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I'm upset about because I didn't know.
Yeah.
But I wish I had just stayed with her the whole time.
Well, I can hear you still kind of replaying step by step that if you had known better, you would have done better.
Lots of that.
Yeah.
Lots of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of that.
Is
And
that the hardest part of this journey for you so far?
well, yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things I'd like to tell her or just share with her, or, I found your hat, you know,
Yeah.
just stupid stuff. I mean, and some not so stupid, but
Right.
I did find her hat, and
Yeah.
I just, it just pulls at you to me, it pulls at me to not be able to say things that I intended to say, or tell her things that I wanted to tell her. I mean, that come up that she would just, she would love to know about.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, there's really nobody I can tell, you know.
Right.
It's not, and then there's things that I see in a drawer, and I realize that was really meaningful to Jean, but I really honestly can't remember why.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
What is the greatest insight that you carry forward, and what is the greatest lesson that you have learned as a result of the strength of her choice?
Uh, well, just the fact that, I guess one of the things is that you're, she and I just assumed we were two people, and we were in a relationship. I didn't get it that that's part of it. I mean,
Right.
it's actually much, much bigger, much, much more of a co-creative endeavor.
Right. Right.
And
And she was
so
such an integral partner to your work.
exactly that, absolutely. Yeah, she made a lot of choices. She made the choices for
Right.
the family, really. I mean, the big stuff. I mean, I did amazing things, but she made the choices that gave me that platform to do that, I think,
Right.
and helped. And this was one of them. Honestly, this is one of them. I mean, given that she's going to die or she's going to have Alzheimer's, she made sure it would work for everyone around her. She did that thinking and work to make that
Right.
happen.
Right.
And she did that, my whole married life. She did
Right.
that.
Do you have any, do you have any fear of death yourself, or are you clearer about what you want for yourself as a result of her journey?
Well, I'm not sure I have her strength, um, or the will to do that. I presume I do. I hope I do. I want to. That's what my intention is.
Right.
Um, Someone asked me if Jean wanted to have a conscious death, you know. And I remember we used to go to seminars and stuff and talk about that and whatever. But really, Jean did a conscious death without even talking about it or wanting it or whatever. I mean, maybe not knowing when she slipped across the line, but she engineered it in a way that would work for everybody, and including herself.
How long did you have her stay at home with you before you followed through with, I'm assuming, making the assumption that you had the funeral? How did all of the after death details unfold?
Well, I was a wreck. I just I didn't know how to reach. I couldn't write a letter to everybody. It was really hard. I didn't know how to reach out and stuff. The neighbors didn't feel invited. I didn't. So there's a lot of things I beat myself up about around the after period. And when Jean died, it the guy just came over. We called the home and he just came over and put her in a black bag and off they went. It's like, something's wrong with this.
Right.
And then, some ashes come back.
Right.
I don't know. I didn't plan that. I mean, I didn't do that right.
Yeah.
That wasn't good. And I don't know how to do it better, but I mean, it just takes a planner or some help or something to figure out what could really be better.
Had she
Um,
left much, had she left any instructions for preference of being cremated, and, had she arranged that?
we knew she was going to be cremated, and we have her mother's ashes and her father's ashes and our dog's ashes in a certain spot in the backyard in the garden. So we knew that was going to happen, and it did.
Uh,
And so my son and his wife and myself and her sister stood, and we buried the ashes. But
mhm.
I don't know. But that it didn't. I wanted meaning, and I wasn't. I was so numb. I don't know that I could do meaning,
Right.
frankly.
Well, hopefully the meaning will evolve. And
Well, it is. It is. I just bought a little statue of Minerva, and
uh,
that is, the goddess of wisdom, and that is a statue that she walked by as a child to go to school, and so she had dream about it. So I realized, ooh, that would be cool. Now I wanted something big enough for the garden, but
right,
it's kind of
right,
weeny, it's sort of small and everything. But it is to me, it's like adding. I put it in her office where her office was. So, but I feel like, okay, that feels good.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think, you experienced on this journey that death really isn't a moment in time. The
Right.
truth is, we're all dying from the moment that we're born. And then there is this dying process. And Jean took a very active part in her dying process, and grief itself is a process. And there are no, just like there are no two births alike, there are no two deaths alike, there are no two grieving processes that are alike. And so, um, it's my hope that yours continues to unfold in a way that you can find the meaning and appreciate the gift that she's given everyone, to know that there is an option if your choice is not to unfold in a long Alzheimer's process.
Yes, I think this is something that is really, really important, that people with Alzheimer's need to be informed that this is an option.
Right,
And there's really nobody out there to do it, as far as I can tell. I mean, maybe they'll pick up the odd book or something, but
right.
the caregivers aren't going to do it. The medical people aren't going to do it.
Yeah,
There's nobody there,
yeah,
and yet it is. I don't know. Even for somebody who doesn't have Alzheimer's, it's really a superior option, I think.
right. Well, and I think that death has so long been a taboo that it is maybe unfolding at a slower pace than we would like. And I really believe that because we have a growing epidemic, talking of pandemics, we have a growing number of people who are facing that diagnosis. And so I hope sooner than later, but at least gradually, I know you and I both, by having this conversation, are contributing to people knowing that they have an option.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
so I truly, truly am grateful for your courage to share your journey so vulnerably. I mean, and to share not only the process itself, but to just share yourself, your process as a partner, on what the grief journey is like.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
so if people are eager to connect with you, can you share a bit about how they can reach you?
Well, one thing would be to look at Jean's obituary, and I made a little movie of her stuff. So and it's part of our nonprofit organization, the Center for Wise Democracy. So you can see her obituary and the movie and some pictures
As I get this together, I'll include that link.
okay. And then you can, my address, my email is jim@wisedemocracy.org also.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much, Jim. I look forward to sharing this because I really support people having the right to choose and to consciously be aware of what their choices are.
Yes. Yes. Me too.
Thank you
Okay.
very, very much.
Thank you, Rhonda. Yep.